guys. This time I'm going to review one of my longest awaited, most highly anticipated, presumably horror movies in I think 2 years, and that's the Poughkeepsie tapes. Now I say presumably horror movie because after seeing it, okay, I saw a trailer for it sometime back in '07, and it was supposed to come out the winter of '07, I think, and I was pumped to see it because the trailer made it look like this new Blair Witch type of horror movie, or shockumentary, where you see footage of the serial killer killing his victims. His MO is he tapes all his murders, and the FBI or the cops, they all found it at his house one day while he was gone, and they look at the tapes, and those are all his murders, or not all of them. Some of the tapes are missing, but yeah, they investigate the whole case from that point on, and yeah, from the trailer, I thought it was going to be like a suspense-filled, like, I don't know, maybe not slasher, but just more of a horror movie like Blair Witch, or where you're at least, or like let's say Quarantine or Cloverfield, or one of those Blair Witch influenced movies where it's like realistic and supposedly real footage, and of bad things happening. So yeah, after seeing it, I can understand why it never got released, because I think it was bought by MGM and they decided not to release it. They shelved it. And depending on what you expect, it might kind of suck. Because if you're expecting a horror movie with lots of suspense, lots of violence and gore, or lots of jump scares, then you're going to be disappointed, because most of it is the documentary type of, the documentary aspect. It's a mockumentary, and it's like something you see on Court TV, A&E, Investigative Report, what am I thinking of, 2020, 60 Minutes, those kind of documentaries where they investigate a long-running case, murder case, or a serial killer, or whatever. And yeah, I found that part more interesting than the actual footage itself, because the footage, some of it was creepy, some of it was suspenseful, but for the most part I couldn't tell what the hell was going on. Like 2/3 of the time I couldn't make out what was happening, because it was either too shaky or too dark, or too many cuts, too many weird cuts that sort of like obscure what's going on, or like certain angles that you don't see what's happening, but it's implied or shown just a little bit. And from what little I saw, like the violence, it looked either fake in parts, or weak. Yeah, fake or weak. Like I'm thinking of this one scene where a guy gets hit in the head with a hammer while he's driving, and the killer's behind his seat, and like he's holding the camera with this hand, the killer's right here, the killer's back here, and the hammer hits him from right there. And first of all, I'm thinking, like, how do you have enough space to really hit him that hard? You have more spaces like that. But when the hammer hit the guy's head, it just looked like a little tap. Like, it didn't really look that shocking. Yeah, and then yeah, I think there was like a throat slitting at some point, but for the most part, like, I just couldn't tell what was going on, because it was either the camera was too shaky or it was too dark, and some parts I couldn't tell who was who, or like, okay, there's this other scene where the killer goes into this house And he's stalking this girl about to take a shower, and then once he gets to her, they start talking, and she starts talking to him like they know each other, and the more they talk, it seems like they're boyfriend and girlfriend. So I'm thinking, oh, okay, maybe this is the killer's house. He's just talking to his girlfriend. He can turn his camera off, and you know, that interspersed with like dark shots where you can't see anything as they're walking through the house. You know, I get confused as to who's who, because I'm thinking it's the killer's, at least the male voice that I'm hearing. I'm thinking it's the killer talking the whole time, but it's just this girl's boyfriend, because in another shot you see the killer ducking into a closet, you know, while the girlfriend's talking or walking around, and then she comes back in the room, and that same voice you've been hearing that's been holding the camera, you know, you see the guy, it's her boyfriend, so you're thinking the killer, her boyfriend's the killer, but then the killer comes out from somewhere and kills them both, and then there's like this kid that comes out of nowhere from some other room, and then the killer starts chasing the kid. And like, I was confused as to like who was holding the camera or who was talking. So, you know, it got really confusing at times. And then there's this other thing with this girl who the killer like holds captive for a while until he eventually leaves his house where the cops found the footage, and then she's like somewhere in the basement, and then she gives an interview where she's like, she has Stockholm syndrome for the killer. You know, she loves the killer basically, and it ends on a bittersweet note, and the killer was still at large, so the ending was kind of anticlimactic depending on what you expect, but it made sense for the documentary type of movie it was. And then I guess on the upside, aside from the shaky cam or the footage that I couldn't tell what was going on, some of it was mildly suspenseful. The killer was, you know, stalking his victims or walking up to his victims and talking to them or harassing them. The way he yelled at his victims, it was really creepy. Let me see. Yeah, there's this one part where he kidnaps this little girl. You know, he just walks up to her and starts talking to her, you know, saying little weird creepy things while still being nice. And, you know, I thought that was played really well. And, you know, another part where, you know, he's talking to little kids, and he invites two into his house, and but then lets them go. So, but the scene was still creepy just because, you know, like, you thought he was gonna do something, and he's just so creepy, and like, think any minute now. And I think in that part, the kids heard something down in the basement, and they asked what it was, and then he lied about it, and then just said like, oh, okay, I don't want cookies, go now. And that's when he let him go. And you know, the whole documentary, the story, the basic story of it just unfolding as a documentary, I appreciated that. I thought that was more interesting than the actual footage. So yeah, from the trailer, like, the trailer kind of is misleading, in my opinion. So if you're expecting a Blair Witch type of fast-paced, you know, bunch of jump scares, blood, gore. I mean, there was hardly any blood or gore because, again, you know, a lot of it was obscure and you couldn't tell what was going on at the time. And yeah, if you're expecting something like Blair Witch, Cloverfield, Quarantine, you're probably going to be disappointed. If you're expecting what it looked like in the trailer, you're going to be disappointed. But if you like documentaries, like, you know, the ones you see on TV, then you might appreciate this. I mean, it's a fairly interesting, mildly entertaining story, but I don't feel like I need to see it again. I mean, it just wasn't like, it wasn't what the trailer made it out to be for me personally, and on that, in that respect, it was disappointing. If I had to rate this movie, probably give it